Welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. In this podcast, I've got Chad with me. And Chad had one of these encounters that, we sometimes don't want to talk about. As a kid, we see things that we don't bring up till years later. But he was 12 years old when he had a Class A encounter with Bigfoot. He's going to talk about that in just a second. But as I always say, thank you guys for all the support. You guys are really awesome. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. But let's just jump right into it. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm really glad you're here. I'm excited for my audience to hear this encounter. So take us back to where you started to have these things happen on the property and walk us through the encounter.
Yeah, so there was a lot of things going on that I never connected the dots on until later in life. Honestly, in my early to mid 20s is when I really started connecting the dots on this. But starting around the time when I was about, I'd say 9 or 10 years old, my friends and I in the neighborhood, we were always trying to get together and camp out in my one friend's backyard because it butted right up to the woods in our little area we lived in. And we called it the screaming thing. We always wanted to hear this. You guys want to camp out this weekend and see if we can hear the screaming thing? Yeah, for sure. And it scared the bejesus out of us. I mean, it sounded so, most of the time the scream was your typical woman being murdered scream, like a blood curdling shriek, and it just with a volume that was so loud, we knew it wasn't a little 30-pound bobcat that all of our parents were telling us it was. But also at that age, you don't know what else to call it. You don't know, so you just kind of take their word for it. You don't get too scared because you're 30 feet from the house. But we'd set a tent up and camp out there all the time, and weekend after weekend, especially for a couple summers in a row, we'd do that, and we'd hear people scream, hear that screaming. A couple other weird things that happened. One time I was at my friend's house, and his neighbor was an old lady, and I saw her one night throwing steaks, full cuts of meat, off the back deck into the brush, and she was saying, "Here, kitty, kitty." And I don't know exactly what was up with that, but I do know a lot of people who can't quite compute or register when they see one of these beings will say they saw a mountain lion or they saw a bear, or they'll try to just assign something that they can reason to it. So that was a strange thing. I don't know what that was about, but it's worth noting. Another friend of mine was cutting through the woods. The buddy whose house we always stayed at, he was cutting through the woods at dusk one time, said he saw a mountain lion. And there are not any mountain lions in southeastern Indiana. So I don't know what it was he saw, but that was his story. Another time I was walking with a group of friends in broad daylight, about 4 or 5 of us on the edge of the street, and it was about 4 feet of cut grass, and then it was tall briar bushes heading into the woods. And as we were walking, we were about 10 feet away from the briar bush, and we just heard and saw the bush shaking, and I saw about a 1 foot by 1 foot patch of red, long, like rusty colored, orangutan colored hair, and that hair was about 4 to 5 feet off the ground. And when whatever was shaking that bush took off into the woods. So, again, we were all just like, was that a dog? Like, that's a weird color for a dog. And it was a really tall dog, or it was like jumping in the air or something when we saw it. But when you can't explain something, you just kind of take it for what it is and keep walking to your friend's house, So we saw, those were some things that had happened. I haven't ever really been able to recall feeling like I was being watched, or I feel like one time or another, my sister or myself might have felt like or seen like eyes looking in our bedroom window at night, on the same side of the house where I had my encounter at 12. But I can't confirm that 100%. I feel like I should talk to my sister about that and ask. But when everything came together for a moment, and then the memory got repressed because I couldn't rationalize it. I had seen Harry and the Hendersons by this time in my life, but other than that, I didn't really have any exposure to Sasquatch or the idea, or didn't know anything about it. I hadn't thought of Sasquatch when I heard these screams that we were hearing, or anything like that. We just didn't know, and we didn't put too much thought into it. But one night, my friend and I had got a hold of some cigars, like standard tobacco cigars, nothing, no drugs or anything. We were 12, and he's having a sleepover with me, and the house was on a steep hill. I mean, a real steep grade down to the lake. The backyard was probably 60 yards long, all the way down to the lake. And the side lot beside us was a vacant lot that was pretty bare. There were probably 20 trees on the whole third of an acre parcel. Um, but there wasn't any bush or like scrub, like brush to hide in or anything like that. And it was 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. We went out there, thought we were cool, smoked the cigar, coughed our brains out, put them out, and we were just sitting there talking and hanging out, and then all of a sudden, something we heard a scream from very close range that the classic rattled your lungs inside your chest, and now, like, having gone through the medical training that I've gone through and becoming a doctor and being very familiar with the human body and its capabilities, knowing that absolutely there's no man nor beast that can produce this volume, not only this volume of vocalization, but the range, the frequency range of vocalization, because it was started as a low rumbling growl and then elevated to a high pitched shriek. But even when it was the high pitched shriek, we were still vibrating. Our bones were still shaking in our body. So it was the high pitched like shriek and the low growling, like rumbling, bassy sound all at once. It was 2 or 3 different octaves of sound, and just it didn't last a long time. It was probably one and a half full seconds, and just completely stunned. My friend instantly ran into the house. We were standing right outside the door, so on the deck. So he just grabbed the door and ran inside. But I couldn't go inside without looking in the direction of the sound. So I looked over, and no more than 40 feet, probably closer to 30 feet away, a little bit closer to the lake, so a little bit further downhill, standing right next to one of the larger old growth trees in the vacant lot, was it was a full moon out, or at least a bright moon behind the creature, so it was backlit. I didn't see any facial detail or anything like that, but I absolutely saw I'm estimating 9 to 10 feet tall, hairy man looking thing with his left arm wrapped around the tree, just staring straight at me. And that's, but it doesn't like scare me when I think about it, but I do get excited. So like my heart's kind of, racing right now. I'm getting a little excited. And even at the time, it startled me, but I wouldn't say that it scared me, like made me very afraid. It was just a shock. And I was completely dumbfounded. And when we looked at each other for maybe 2 or 3 seconds, but when you're having an adrenaline dump, that seems like 3 or 4 minutes. Looked right at each other. Again, he was backlit by the moon, so it was a big silhouette I was seeing, but you could see, like, I could see the individual hair. I could see hair hanging down off the arm that was around the tree. And what I did was I actually kind of laughed. I kind of chuckled, saying like, haha, somebody is playing a joke on me, because there's no way that like what else could this be? Again, I was so unfamiliar with the Sasquatch topic that I didn't even consider that I was looking at a Sasquatch. But there's even with a megaphone, that megaphones can make your voice amplified, but they can't produce those decibels and those frequencies. So I was like, haha, somebody, you got me. And then I just turned around and walked inside. Like, I didn't run, but I just quickly got inside the house, flipped the lights off, and went. And I think I passed out after that. I think, when you have an adrenaline dump for a few minutes, your heart's still pounding, you're racing, but you get pretty exhausted pretty quickly once you feel safe again. So that happened. And it is as vivid to me now as it was the moment it happened. And other than asking my parents the next morning when my friend and I came upstairs for breakfast, did you guys hear that scream last night? but mom and dad both said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Other than that, I think I might have brought it up to my friend once or twice between then and when I was about 26, because I remember this all came back to me during my first year of pediatrics residency. So I was 26 years old. Other than I might have mentioned it to him once or twice, and every time since then, I've mentioned, now we're even close. We're lifelong friends, and I'll be seeing him next week, and I still bring it up, and he says all I remember is I don't remember hearing anything or seeing anything. All I remember is being terrified and running in the house. So he remembers that much, and I think he's compartmentalized that scream because that was terrifying. If I didn't have myself convinced it was just a person playing a trick on me, I probably would I would have been terrified. But I kind of compartmentalized it too, just because. I mean, I just think maybe I didn't want to think about it too much because I think deep down I knew that couldn't have been a person. Like, oh, what are they on? They're on stilts, on stilts, standing on a really steep hill, with some sort of speaker system built into their suit or whatever. There's no, and so I think either I didn't want to think about it too much, or maybe it's scared me or traumatized me a little more than I let on. But it was pretty much compartmentalized. I mean, if anybody would have come up and asked me, have you ever been screamed at by a big giant thing? I would have remembered it. It's not like the memory was inaccessible to me, but it wasn't in my awareness for the most part until I was 26. I caught one of these reality TV Bigfoot shows, and I heard someone describing their encounter, and man, it was like the gun was locked and ready. The second they described that vocal range, the second they said, it was like 2 or 3 levels of frequency all in one scream. When they described that vocalization and how that's the way I was looking to describe it. That's the vocabulary that I needed to accurately describe that scream. When they said it, like a floodgate, everything, all the memories came back, and I started plugging in the connecting the dots with the screaming thing in the woods. I got a flash of the lady throwing steaks off her deck. I got my buddy seeing the lion, that red patch of hair shaking a bush 5 feet off the ground. All of it just came back at once, pretty much. And so I spent, the next several, weeks, months, years. I think about it very often, just integrating that whole floodgate, that whole flooding experience of memory. And I'm so thankful. I'm happy. Like, I'm blessed about it. I feel like I'm fortunate to have had my experience. I think, it saddens me how many people have really negative or traumatic experience, or they lose their passion and their joy for the woods and the outdoors and stuff. But I have a lot of compassion for those people.
First off, it's amazing to me how the human body and brain will do that. It'll compartmentalize things and put them in specific areas. And I know even me, like, there's things that have to jog my memory before memories of traumatic things will pop up. And, thankfully for you, that's kind of what happened. And it is a good thing that you thought it was somebody playing a joke on you, because you probably wouldn't be sleeping at all, because I wouldn't have. Did you ever see anything after that on that property?
No. One thing I will note, that another thing I can't, and I'm pretty sure this happened before my sighting. I would have every summer. I would have a camp out with my dad. We down on our boat dock, because we lived on the lake, but it was just a big long hill, down a steep hill down to the lake. I would have a camp out with my guy friends, and we'd all sleep on the boat dock. There'd be like 10 of us maybe, and 1 or 2 dads. We'd cook hot dogs and swim and everything. I remember waking up, like being the only one awake, and seeing what looked like a big, like not big, but like a white grocery bag, like a plastic grocery bag filled up and tied off. And I couldn't tell what it was, but that's what it looked like. Fall right in the middle of the cove of the lake where I was at. And that cove is probably 150 feet wide. So for something that light and buoyant, that the fact that it just floated there, a human couldn't throw it that far. It just landed right in the middle of the lake. I didn't see where it come from. All I heard is it hit the water and saw it floating. And I did hear that night a few other big splashes in the water. That's something to make note of too. That happened. That happened before I had my encounter. But no, since that time, I don't recall having any other experiences on that property or seeing anything. And it wasn't a very rural property. Like I said, it was suburbia. It was a subdivision, but it was much more sparsely populated than it is now. And highly abundant deer, because deer are protected in that area, and lots of water and wildlife and stuff, and still plenty of woods at that time.
Man, well, you were right, because you are very fortunate to have that kind of experience and then not be terrified to go into the woods. I talk to a lot of guys, man, and it kind of takes that from them. And like for me, man, the woods is where I go to pray. That's my happy spot. I love to unwind and all these things. And, I fortunately can still go out into the woods knowing these creatures are there. But man, there's some guys, they can't, because they've had really bad experiences. But speaking of that, and I always ask my guests, and I would love to know, how that has affected you. But how did that affect the rest of your life after realizing what that was in your 20s?
I mean, since I've realized what it was, like the time that I began to realize what it was the time that I began to return, what I call return to self, to make the return back to my heart after going through society's washing machine of creativity and imagination, and the cleansing, going through the school system and the indoctrination system, that is designed to take you away from yourself. It's designed to calcify your ego or harden your ego, make you a worker bee, make you perfectly happy to just pay taxes and die. So the same, when that all came back to me, was a time when I was breaking out of that mind control or that programming. At this point, I've listened to absolutely thousands of eyewitness testimonies for these beings, and the vast majority, as you know, are hardworking people, and they're good people that don't lie, and they're not making it up. You of course, you have your kooks out there, but I think the vast majority, you don't have a lot to gain by coming out and saying, "Hey, I saw a 10-foot tall hairy bipedal creature with orbs flying around his head." You don't have a lot to gain from that. So, it's also enhanced my connection with my brothers and sisters. And it's made me care for my neighbor more, and whatever these beings are, they're a part of this world that I live in. They're a part of my human experience. And
there's a lot of things in God's universe that we just maybe don't understand, and maybe we'll never have those answers, but it's definitely a brotherhood. I like that word that you used. And the majority of people I've talked to in this world, that's what I call it, a world, has just been really good people that see something they don't know what to do with, can't explain, or whatever. And then it sends you down this rabbit hole where you're searching for answers. And, unfortunately, there's just not a lot of answers because there's a stigma attached to it. And if you've seen Bigfoot or you talk about it, there's something wrong with you. And whole purpose for this show was to give people a safe platform to come and talk about their experience, hopefully get some answers and feel like they're not alone in this. Because I think, we're supposed to feel like we're connected to something. And that's what I love about my faith so much. I love about being a Christian is it's a brotherhood. I belong to something bigger than me. And anyways, I'm trying to bring that to this show. And, man, really cool experience. I'm glad you came on here, and I'm glad you shared it with us. What do you think that it wanted? Why do you think it was on your property?
I think about that a lot, because it obviously easily could have just stayed, remained in the shadows, or stayed hidden, or just observed us. So I think that, I have a subtle intuition that that thing was there, and I believe that Sabe, like those beings know your heart. Like they were never disconnected from nature like we were. These beings, their bare feet still touch the earth every day. We're insulated like a wire with rubber on our soles of our feet. We don't come in contact with the earth. They haven't been disconnected from their environment like we have. We build all these things around us to separate us from where we come from. Where we physically come from. What I'm saying is, they know your vibration, they know your heart, and I think not all, but in some of these cases where hunters get scared out of the woods, I think there's probably been plenty of poachers scared out of the woods, people practicing unethical, not respecting nature and things like that. I think sometimes when you're scared or chased out of the woods, they might be protecting you from something else that's in there that you really don't want to come in contact with. Not as all that it seems, and that there's, the truth is much stranger than fiction.
That's a true statement, man. The truth is way stranger than fiction. Well, man, I appreciate you being here. I know you got more to share, so we're going to have you back on. Be careful out there on the road, man. If you see something in the future, I know you'll be back on, but let us know. I'm excited to talk to you again, and I appreciate your time. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to say it, but without you, it wouldn't be possible. I am so blown away by the support in this community, and I appreciate every one of you guys. You guys are awesome. If you like that episode, you're going to love this one. And like I always say, stay prayed up. We'll talk soon.